such a good call out around it. It feels like you're describing dating or like, making friends the first time you go to college or like a new job or whatever, right? I mean, that the foundation of it, what I'm hearing you talk about is the evaluation process, and whatever end of that relationship you're on, there should be an opportunity to go and sort of court each other and get to know each other and figure out what that mutual value is and why we should work together. I think all too often, and I'm going to make this kind of assumptive statement, but all too often we work under the premise that what we do as a software company, vendor, technologist, whatever we are, right? Or, the partner on the other end of it, whether you're, services like you all provide or something else in, tech integrations, whatever it might be. We work under the assumption that it's one-sided, I think. I've heard that quite a bit talking to folks. Yeah. Actually, so you have a thought there. I want to hear your thoughts because so if it's one-sided, I think we can generalize and say it won't work. How do you ensure it's not? Like, what are some of the things you can do? You talked about that kind of evaluation, courting, early stage. Are there questions that you ask? Are there, things that you look for early on when establishing partnerships toward growing the business better that perhaps, somebody else could use to do the same?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is such a key point. My mind just started running with that. A lot of people go into partnerships thinking it's a fix and thinking they don't have to put in any of the work to make it work. So, I come from this as an agency that does marketing, sales, and service, right? We're a HubSpot partner. We work with our clients to help them achieve their goals. Early on in the business, right? I think many people can relate to this. You take on clients because you need to build up your client base and you need to pay your bills and everything along those lines. But as you mature as a business, you go through the process of, the discovery and the evaluation. And if you see that they're also not willing to put in any work to make the partnership work, you're going to fall flat. You're not going to be able to get them the results. You're not going to be able to take on their brand voice because they're not willing to participate. So I think understanding, and there's a variety of different ways that you can do that, but you can understand someone's level of participation just in conversations that you're having and their willingness to contribute and their ability to be transparent too. Because I think you can get into a lot of these conversations too. I know we've had it in the past where, you get on a call and, oh, yeah, we do this really, really well, but they don't want to show you like what's going on behind the scenes. They don't want to show you the data. They don't want to show you what their numbers are. They don't want to tell you what their growth goals are, whether it's they don't know it, whether it's they don't want to contribute to it, whether it's just, hey, that's your problem now, fix it for me. And that's the difference between, just someone who's a vendor for you and someone who's a partner to your organization.
That's such a good call out, the vendor versus partner. And I've even heard the term alliance. Everyone loves to use the word alliance because it feels, it feels more, I don't know, corporate-y or whatever. My mind is thinking like it feels more intentional, irrelevant, I think. But at the end of the day, what you're describing to me is this idea of mutual agreement, which, at its core, I think we could generally say that people in partnerships, I mean, maybe at face value, expected it should be mutual. It should be, a collective goal. But I can tell you, I've been asked this question a lot. In fact, I think I posted on LinkedIn the other day about this, but we asked the question a lot of like, when I think about partnerships and I think about the value of a partner, what do they do for, what do I do for them? Right. And I always challenge back and say like, you can also actually say, what do they do for you? And that's okay. You can sort of think about it from both, angles, both lenses. But the second part of the question is usually something around like, well, how do I know what to like deliver in terms of value? How do I know what they need? And I always go back to like, just ask. And what you're describing is this idea of open communication and very clear expectations around certainly KPIs and goals, but the dynamic being that you get to revisit that with partners, with customers, with people that you're looking to do business with, that it's not permanent, right? So it's not a permanent state. We can decide if it works in 6 months or a year or 6 days, because at the end of the day, our intent here is to do things better together, the better together stories I always talk about in the show versus like independent, which is interesting.
Absolutely. No, I think that's such a good point because, I can look at some of, whether it's clients that we work with. One, we talked about those clear expectations, setting those goals, giving ourselves, a point of where we want to reach together, right? If you don't set those goals, you're never going to know where you're supposed to direct your attention to. But I think what also creates friction throughout some of these conversations is if you don't have those transparent conversations as you move forward, you're never going to be able to adjust your strategy to get back on track. And I feel like sometimes, matter of fact is, especially like coming from a creative agency, right? Some of your ideas fall flat. Like you need to experiment and you need to be willing to test and try new things. And of course, there's going to be things that we know how to do that we have proven track records for, but they might not hit as well as we thought that they were going to. And the worst thing that we can do as an agency partner is to ignore it or not talk about it. And, then it's, well, is this like the elephant in the room that it's not working out? And, what are we going to do next? You have to have that clear communication all the way through and talk about the good and the bad. But as long as you're still aligned on the same vision of how you're going to work towards it, that transparency there needs to come from both parts. Hey, is it working or not on our end? Is this what I was intending to receive from, the other partner's end? So having that clear communication all the way through and just be willing to talk about the good and the bad, regardless of the outcome you may think, because if you're not transparent, there's no trust there. And there's misalignment.
Yeah. The transparency piece I think is important. And if I was starting an org tomorrow and I was going to go and build a partner, a process, a partner program, everyone loves to say ecosystem. So we'll use the term. You mentioned something that I probably have a bit of an obsession with, which is just the idea of experimentation.
Yes.
And I think actually Mark Robert said that earlier on, or maybe it was Dave Kinsell, but one of the early HubSpot leaders used to always talk about, it's like resonating in the back of my mind. And I know we're talking about HubSpot a lot. I've been here for much of my last, 8 years. But one of the things they used to always say was like, do unscalable things early. The other thing they always said too was like your job as a leader, as in sales and CS and in partnerships, is not to make assumptions. Your job is to use data to run experiments. And as those experiments prove value, prove that they work, then you progress forward to what is sort of iteration 2, iteration 3. How do I move this thing forward? And what you're describing is being on both the receiving and initiation end of this ideology, that thinking about partnership isn't singular. What I'm hearing you say is it's dynamic, yes, but it requires a measure of flexibility to not just pivot away from things that don't work, but to look at, measure, and understand areas of opportunity, areas of misstep perhaps, and use that opportunity or misstep to drive forward. But Absolutely. That all comes to your final word there, transparency, honesty, directness, which I think on both parties, is probably the most important part.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the whole idea, optimization, right? Like you have to continue to evolve the process in order to do it better. And data drives those decisions, no matter where you're coming from. If you're not willing to be transparent, if you're not willing to look at the data to see, is this successful or is it not, then it's really, just an ideology there. So yeah, of course, it's going to start off with that idea of experimentation. You have to have a plan. You have to have a goal. You have to have a roadmap forward. But until you start to execute and build up that data, you're not going to be able to adjust and realign. And that's all going to have to be transparent all the way throughout the relationship.
I love it. What a great place to end. So transparency, using data to make decisions, obviously, which we all love. And then it kind of, if I were to synthesize everything we've talked about today, is trust. It's building trust. It's keeping trust. It's maintaining with intent that two-way street in terms of communication and just, being on top of it, staying consistent with the way that you communicate, the way that you engage the partnership and realizing that it's not perfect all the time, much like relationships. But at the end of the day, if the intent is good, then you're honest with each other, you'll find the right path forward. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's great.
This has been fun.
It has been fun. I enjoyed this a lot. It's a really good chat. If folks want to connect with you, if they want to, find you and have their own conversation, where do they find you on the internet?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn at Shana Steigerwalt, or hit us up on moderndrivenmedia.com. We have all our social channels there, but happy to talk to anybody. Brilliant. Happy to look at partnership opportunities.
I love it. I love that plug. Yeah, it's great. If you want to partner or you want to know how to partner, reach out to Shana. That's perfect. This has been fun. Thank you again. And until next time, my friend, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.